women and children in authoritarian regimes, when persecuted, suffer in a very specific way, in a very important way that needs to be addressed.
Today we have Madeleine Kearns from National Review here to discuss a recent column for National Review. In it, she details China's monstrous abuse of Uyghur women. In the past 2 years, the U.S. government and human rights groups have accused China of detaining 1 to 3 million Muslims, including Uyghurs, in camps. Some experts in media go so far as to call China's behavior towards Muslim minorities genocide. Here to talk with us more about this today is Maddie, who is specifically following the plight of Uyghur women. Could you share with us, Maddie, a little bit about your column and what these women are experiencing, how China is treating them?
Sure. So my column was really a response to a very thorough and terrifying report from the Associated Press, looking at just exactly how it is that the Chinese government are curbing the growth of the Uyghur population. And what this report found was that families with more than one child, or even families deemed to have too many children, just arbitrarily decided by officials, were being separated and sent to camps, and women, pregnant women or women who might become pregnant, were having forced abortions, forced sterilizations. Of course, this isn't exactly totally new. We know that China has had draconian one-child policies and so on from in the 1990s, and so this isn't a total surprise. But the detail in this report was really very harrowing. You were hearing from women who had been kicked in the stomach, women who had forced abortions and not even realized that was what had happened, children just ripped from the arms of their parents. So it's really, really evil stuff.
You mentioned this in your column. You ask, where's the feminist outcry? Could you talk about that? Why aren't feminists speaking out more about this story?
Sure. So, I mean, it's definitely true that this has got some attention and some people have, as you said, had outcry over this, but I think nowhere near enough. I'm reminded here, Katie, of the scenes from the 1980s novel, The Handmaid's Tale, where women were essentially, their reproductive systems were hijacked in a very brutal and degrading way by the state. In that case, it was a sort of mock Christian patriarchy. And feminists thought, oh gosh, what a horrible dystopian tale. And of course, this here is, in my view, and I suspect in your view, just as horrible, just as dystopian. There is an uncomfortable element to this, of course, though, which occasionally seeps out in some of the reporting, which is that it challenges some of the assumptions that we have about the uses of birth control and abortion in other contexts. And as a side note, I think that this is actually an opportunity for people on both sides of the abortion divide to come together, because at the very least, people should be free to choose to have children if they want to have children. So I think that there is both a pro-life and a pro-choice case to be made here for why this is so important. And yet it does sometimes feel that we're a little more squeamish, or at least the mainstream media are a little more squeamish in calling out this affront to reproductive freedom.
What do you think of the media coverage of this story? Do you think there needs to be more media coverage, or are you satisfied with it?
I think there needs to be more media coverage. I think that in the last few weeks, we've done a lot in the UK as well as the US to really look at how are the Uyghurs being treated by the Chinese generally. This has very uncomfortable implications across the board, doesn't it? Because we have so much of our stuff is made in China, so then imported here, and we're wondering, I was actually thinking the other night, Kate, I was looking at my shower curtain that I ordered, and it says made in China, and I'm thinking, like, Made by whom? It's extremely uncomfortable to think about this. And there was a really good interview, Andrew Marr, the British journalist, who had the Chinese ambassador to the UK on his show and asked him about the drone footage, which of course went very widely around Twitter, of people with shaven heads being packed off onto trains, taken away to camps. Very disturbing footage. I think that we've done a lot to reckon with that aspect, but as is very often the case, women and children in authoritarian regimes, when persecuted, suffer in a very specific way, in a very important way that needs to be addressed. And I think that we haven't yet done enough to really talk about what's going on with these forced sterilizations, forced abortions, and of course, family separation.
You end your column by saying that men and women of conscience in the West have a duty to call this out for what it is, evil. How can Americans do that? How would you recommend Americans react to it?
Well, I think that there's just so many like basic freedoms here that are being interfered with, and I think that if it's not evil to pin down a woman and kick her in the stomach and take her children from her, and try and control how many children she has, especially when a lot of these women are religious and they believe that their children are a gift from God, and so you have like all sorts of rights being infringed here, not just bodily autonomy, not just freedom of speech, but freedom of religion. The whole works. And so I think that we who see these principles as important and worth defending really have to be very strident in our opposition to those who seek to undermine them.